Good evening. The past can be many things. It can seemingly fool you, it can imprison you, and it can be your best teacher. My name is Omar Alhegelan, and I would like to welcome all of LTL Nation to this evening's 7-minute Breakthrough Revolution. As you may have guessed, tonight's topic is the past. So, what can we say about the past? The past can sometimes fool us. It can change the way that we perceive an event when seen as the past and not the present. It is said, hindsight is 20/20. And that's very true, because what can appear and what can seem to be as a negative event initially, with a little time, you can actually go back and look at that same negative event and realize that it actually happened for a good reason. So don't always fall into that trap that everything that happens, every negative thing that happens to you is actually negative. Because sometimes we ourselves end up, we create these realities. Everything that we do, we create. And so sometimes we have to own not only the good things that we create, but we have to understand why sometimes we create negative events in our lives, why we sabotage, why we do things that aren't exactly at the time the way we want it to be. But you know what? More likely than not, when you go back in time, you will figure out and you will look at that event and you will realize that it actually happened for a good reason. Let me tell you a story actually a sad story that explains this point very well. A few years ago, there was a French reality show, and they got a lot of Olympic stars, Olympic swimmers and Olympic boxers and people who were very good at sailing, skateboarding, so on and so forth. And they decided to do a show. I think they were filming in Argentina. And at the time, they had 2 helicopters taking off to go to a certain destination. And there was a French swimmer by the name of Alain Bernard, very well-known Olympic medalist, gold medalist. And he was supposed to be in that first chopper. And at the very last second, they came up to him and they said, "I'm sorry, you cannot board." And there was a little back and forth because he really wanted to go. He was supposed to be the first man on the chopper. He was supposed to be in that first group of people. He wanted to be in the helicopter. Unfortunately, they said he couldn't go. So he was sad. He was really distraught because he wanted to be part. I mean, he had traveled all the way to Argentina. He wanted to be part of that first group that took off and, went on and to do this reality TV show. And you know what happened? Unfortunately, there was an in-air accident. The helicopter that was filming the other helicopter collided with it, and unfortunately, everybody on board died. So what initially seemed like bad news ended up being a blessing in disguise. So time can do that. When we look at the past, don't always think that a bad event happens sometimes it happens for a very good reason. The past can also imprison us. A lot of times we fall prey to anger, hate, self-pity. I'm sure you have as well. But the trick here is don't become a prisoner of your own emotions. What do I mean by that? When something happens in your life, that something bad happens to you, someone wrongs you, someone does something against you, well, you have 2 options. You can forgive them and move on, or you can hold that grudge and you can be angry at them. But you know what? By doing that, the only thing that you're doing is you are imprisoning yourself with that anger. You're being a prisoner of your own emotions because the other person has no idea what you're talking about. The other person doesn't even know or care what you're feeling about. They're the ones that wronged you, but you keep it up. And so instead of propagating that, make sure that you take the higher road and you just simply forgive them. And by forgiving them, you can create a much better life and therefore not fall prisoner to that past event. The past can also be a great teacher. It's amazing what we can learn. It's amazing the things that we do because of the past. There's a reason why there's a subject in school and universities called history. We all should learn history, whether we do it in school or we do it at home, so as not to repeat ourselves the same mistakes. It's by not understanding, by not knowing our history, that we tend to fall prey to the same traps and keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. So don't fall prey to that, but instead make sure that you educate yourself as much as possible. And in the best way, by doing that, you can actually go and be the best person that you can be by learning from other people's mistakes, by learning from other actions. You know, there's something that I'd like to talk to you about right now, because there's a lot of things that we do today that we have no idea why we do them. And it's all because of history. Let me give you an example. Do you guys know why it is that when we socialize and we want to cheers, we want to make a toast, we put our glasses together and cheers? Well, the reason for that is that back in the old days, when people used to poison one another, the way to get out of that and to make sure that you weren't being poisoned is by doing a skull, by doing a cheers, and making sure that the liquid from your glass mixes in with their glass, and therefore if there was poison in yours, well, there's in theirs now, so obviously the other person would never cheers with you. Another perfect example is why do smokers only light 2 cigarettes with one flame and never a third? Well, during the Great War, what happened was when the soldiers were in their ditches and it was nighttime and someone would light a cigarette, well, guess what? With the first time you light, the first cigarette that you light, they would spot you. The second cigarette, they would aim, and the third, they would fire. So as to not get killed, obviously, the rule of thumb was only light 2 cigarettes at a time and never a third. So, and that's why we do that today. And last but not least, why is it that they say that you're going to have 7 years of bad luck if you break a mirror? Well, back in the olden days, again, mirrors were quite the expensive commodity, meaning that only the nobility and only kings could afford such a thing, such a luxury, such a treat. And so guess what? If you were to break a mirror, you were probably breaking the mirror of a king or of a noble, and so on. Chances are that you're going to probably be imprisoned for 7 years. So there you go. That's why we don't do those things, and that's why it is so important to learn from our past and from our history. So in conclusion, learn from the past so as not to repeat the same mistakes. Don't be a prisoner of your past emotions, and remember that what seemed like bad news at the moment will most likely turn out to be good news with hindsight. Please remember to tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. as Faisal will be broadcasting live from Doha, and he will be starting off the week of compassion. If you have any questions or any comments, please be so kind as to contact us at www.lifetalkslive.com or on our social media, Life Talks Live, and Instagram, Facebook, and all the other social networks out there, YouTube, LinkedIn, so on and so forth, Twitter. I just wanted to let you know, because someone asked a question, where's my assistant this evening? Unfortunately, she's out, or fortunately, she is out being a 6-year-old. She has a friend that's from out of town, that's in town, and so she went to spend the afternoon and evening with her. So she extends her apologies for not being with us this evening, but thank you all for tuning in, and as always, I'd like to close with love, peace, and respect. Salam, shalom, namaste. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.